Would you like to promote, what I'd like to promote is a book. You might could tell more about it. You're going to tell them about your book?
Sure, yeah.
Okay.
So this is a book about the welfare scandal that I was talking about earlier. If you're interested in knowing a lot more about that case, probably more than anybody wants to know, you could pick that up, and I'd be happy to sign that for you too. I wrote this book because it was a complicated case, and I thought that people needed to hear the full story of what happened and how our government was broken by very powerful people. Because if you understand how that case happened, it helps us prevent stuff like that from going on in the future. And two, I wanted my kids to know exactly what our family went through this period. I mean, we had folks come to our house, I had death threats, all kinds of stuff. I wanted people to understand wanted my kids to understand one day exactly what this was like, because this is what sacrifice sometimes requires, right? To do the job the right way, sometimes it requires sacrifice. And so the only way I knew to do that is if I got hit by a bus in 2 months and got wiped off the face of the planet, at least I will have a book written down so that they can read it one day. That was my thought behind it.
All right. What was the outcome of the welfare scandal? Fined and jail. And does the AG fully support your work?
Well, it's been nice being here. I appreciate you all having me. What's the outcome of the welfare scandal? That's the easy part. 7 people have pleaded guilty to either state or federal charges now for their role in the welfare scandal. None of those people are actually in jail at the moment. They have not been sentenced because there's one person left who has been charged with a crime but has pleaded not guilty, and so he's awaiting trial. And what I'm told by prosecutors, again, we don't run the case, we just build the evidence. What I'm told by prosecutors is once that trial happens, then everybody will be sentenced, and then they'll start their jail time after that. So that's the criminal side. There's also a civil side where the state is suing a whole bunch of people to try to get as much of this money back as possible. And that's in civil court in Hinds County, which means it's the year 2025, it's May 1, so I'll see you back here in 5 years and it'll still be going on. I can give you an update then, but it's going to take a long time. It's going to take a long time to get that money back. Does the AG support what we're doing? The frustrating answer is no. So the Attorney General has sued me to stop me from getting some of that money back, unfortunately, and that's been a frustrating thing. But the good news is the state agency, DHS, the Department of Human Services, they pushed, and they're the ones who have hired or have pushed her to hire an outside attorney so that they can now try to get some of that money back. So that's good. And then the other prosecutors, the federal prosecutors and local prosecutors, have taken the lead on trying to get those folks who actually stole money and hold them accountable. So I think all told, Mississippi is doing what it needs to do to hold these people accountable and try to get this money back, but it's going to be a very long process.
Okay. So this question is for your opinion. Why hasn't a prosecutor taken the case of Brian Bailey's improper use of tax money?
Yeah, this one's difficult for me to speak about because it's an ongoing investigation right now. So I have to be very careful about talking about anything that's ongoing. For the welfare scandal, for example, our investigation is done. People have pleaded guilty. One person's left to be tried. But that's an ongoing investigation, so I have to be careful about what I say about that. What I would say is this. Don't leave under the impression that no prosecutor is looking at it, because prosecutors are absolutely 100% looking at it. I just can't tell you what their deliberations are and what they're going to do with it at the end of the day.
All right, and this one is, have you audited how much has been spent, I'm assuming in Mississippi, on illegals?
So we did a study to see how much illegal immigration is costing the state of Mississippi. And we decided to use the most conservative, meaning smallest possible numbers that you could use. Just so no liberal journalist would say, well, you inflated the numbers and there's not that many illegals living in Mississippi. So we said the most conservative estimate is that there are 22,000 illegal immigrants living in Mississippi. That's about the population of the city of Pascagoula. And if you took that population and you looked at what that population cost the state in healthcare costs, so that's taxpayer money going to pay for the health care of those folks. Education costs. So a lot of those kids that are here illegally, they go to school and by law, by federal law, schools cannot turn them away. Or in criminal justice costs. So the increased cost of policing a neighborhood if you have an illegal immigrant committing a crime. If you just add those 3 buckets up, That population of 22,000 illegal immigrants costs Mississippi taxpayers about $100 million a year in your money, taxpayer money. And some people have asked me, well, why don't we do something about it? Well, the truth is, at least before November, we really couldn't do anything about it because the solution really has to come from the federal government. If you have a federal law that says that kids who are illegal immigrants can show up to a school and they have to be educated, like the real answer there is that we got to shut our border down. We got to get control of our border, and we have to do a mass deportation, especially criminal illegal immigrants or violent illegal immigrants. So now the good news is President Trump is in office, and I think we're going to see progress on that issue over the course of the next 2 to 3 years. Because that really is the only way to answer the question. That really is the only way to solve the problem. There's only so much that a state government can do if the federal government is going to have a porous border with Mexico and is going to allow these people to come in.
Okay, this one is respectfully from Tricia. She wants to know, was she saying that she's happy that you're exposing fraud and recovered money in Mississippi, but what's the point if no one's being brought to justice? And then she says that people are awake and we're past ready to see prosecutions. It's the law. Do you have what it takes to follow through?
Yeah, that was easy. It's not hard. We have recovered, you say there's no accountability, there's no results. It's just not true. We've recovered about $75 million. And so just on the welfare case alone, I told you, 7 folks have pleaded guilty and have been prosecuted. The thing you got to bear in mind when you see the auditor's office is we don't get to prosecute anybody. You just can't do it. That's not what the statutes allow me to do. We have to take our cases to the local DA or the Attorney General's office or federal prosecutors. Those are the 3 groups of prosecutors that can prosecute our cases. And I don't want to stand up here and act like everything's been great. There are definitely some cases that we've taken to a prosecutor and we can't get anybody to take it, and those days are frustrating. But the truth is that tons and tons of people have been prosecuted during my time as state auditor. We've handed out, because of our investigations, judges have handed out hundreds of years of prison time for all these folks. Now, you may have that special cousin that you have in the back of your mind who you think is stealing money, and you may think, well, you're not doing anything because JoJo's still out there running around. Well, come tell us about it. Come tell us if you think JoJo's stealing money from the city of Flowood or whatever it may be. We're happy to investigate it. I love investigating cases. My favorite thing to lead our team to do. Is it going to work out every time? Are we able to prove every single case? No, not necessarily. This is the way the world works. You have to do your best and see what happens at the end of it. But we've had hundreds of years of prison time resulting from the investigations that we've done. $75 million recovered in the last 7 years is more money recovered than any 7-year period in the history of the state of Mississippi. So look, it's easy for us to kind of get down about all of these things and the brokenness in government. But there's reason to be optimistic that the future is getting better too. If you don't believe that, then look at what happened in the Trump v. Kamala Harris race. There's reason to be optimistic about what the future holds. We can't be negative all the time. So we gotta acknowledge when there's progress being made, and we gotta work hard to keep it going.
Okay, you're getting tough questions tonight. So this one is, do you think Bryant, I'm assuming Phil Bryant, should have been appointed to FEMA?
Well, look, I think the basis of that question is, did Phil Bryant do something wrong in the middle of the welfare scandal? Well, the truth is that no prosecutor has ever charged Phil Bryant with a crime. Federal prosecutors under Joe Biden looked at that case and didn't charge him with a crime. So if you think they were going to do him a favor, you're crazy. Local prosecutors didn't charge him with a crime. State AG didn't charge him with a crime. And the truth is that, a lot of those people that got charged with a crime, they walked away with a bunch of money. And there's no evidence that Governor Bryant walked away with a penny of any of that money. So, short answer is, yeah, if I were President Trump, I actually absolutely would have looked at folks like Governor Bryant to go on that FEMA panel because the unfortunate truth is that in Mississippi, we get hit with a lot of natural disasters. And so if you want somebody who understands natural disasters, I'd probably be looking at the governors of Florida and Alabama and Mississippi and Louisiana. Those are the kinds of people you want telling these federal bureaucrats, hey, here's what it's like on the ground when there's a tornado or a hurricane or something like that.
Okay, this one is, what happened to Delbert Hoseman's criticism of you looking into something he said you couldn't look into, whatever it was? Can you clarify what I'm talking about and explain what happened? I didn't follow. Go ahead.
Lieutenant Governor Hoseman in general has been a critic of the fact that we look for waste in state government. So for example, We did a big report that found about $335 million worth of waste in 13 state agencies, state senate, some state senators and Lieutenant Governor Husband didn't like it. There was a bill that was drafted that would have eliminated our ability to look for waste. So it cut out our statutory authority to actually look for waste, and that bill passed through a state senate committee. I started calling it the Mississippi Corruption Act because I thought if you want more corruption, this is a great bill to pass. Just keep going. And I think that stuck because people started thinking it was actually called the Mississippi Corruption Act, and they were calling the Lieutenant Governor's office being like, I'm against the Mississippi Corruption Act, and also, why did you name it the Mississippi Corruption Act? And they had to explain to them that they didn't name it that. But thankfully, because of y'all, because of the people who engaged on that issue, that bill was killed on the floor of the state senate by its own author. And he stood up on the floor and he said, the reason I'm killing this is I've gotten a ton of calls from people telling me not to pass this thing. Well, good on y'all. And I didn't do that. Yeah, applause for y'all. I didn't do that. Shad can't make 1,000 phone calls, all right? Didn't do it. Wasn't me. I told people about it. I posted about it on Facebook and X and everywhere else. But that was an example of normal people saying, we don't like that thing right there that you were about to do. We don't like that. And they let their elected representatives know. So you want to talk about being a little bit positive about some of the progress. Sometimes it's killing bills that are just on their face and really terrible. And we're able to get that done sometimes. The big question for us, all of us going forward, is are we willing to put our backs into future efforts like that to get all of the problems fixed, right? It's going to take meetings like this. It's going to take work during elections. It's going to take elected people who are willing to do the tough things. But if we're willing to do that, it works sometimes. That's proof that it works.
Okay, what would help Moj be more effective?
I think it would be more effective if legislators would listen to what we're saying. That's it. So again, Lieutenant Governor Husband was asked in the interview, Shad White's producing all of these audit results that show all this waste. Are you going to listen to it? And you can go look at my Facebook page. I'm not making this up. It's a video of him. He just said, nope. That was it. That's the typical politician answer, right? If it's not my idea, I don't care about it, I'm not listening. That's what would make Moj more effective, is that every time we come out with one of these studies, some lawmaker, some politician says, you know what, we actually got to put a stop to this. Let's pass a bill that shuts this down, or let's cut that funding, or whatever it may be. That's the thing that we need next. That's what it's going to take.
This one's from your friend Robert. Yeah. Oh, you read it? Did you? Okay. Okay. I know you want to stay in the auditor's position forever, and of course you don't want to stay in the auditor's position forever, and of course everyone wants to see you run for governor. I'm one of those people, but judging by how you've run the state auditor's position, wouldn't it be better for people if you were the first lieutenant governor? If you were first the lieutenant governor, I guess instead of being governor first, because you could help us reform the legislative process like we have with the auditor's position. Then after a term as lieutenant governor, run for governor. And we all know lieutenant governors just got more power.
Look, I'll say this. Historically, the lieutenant governor's had a ton of power in Mississippi. That's starting to change, believe it or not, for two reasons. Number one is that Governor Tay Reeves won a court case during his term, his first term, that allows him to line item veto spending. So our governor, with that one court case, went from being one of the weaker governors in America to actually being one of the stronger governors in America, because you can line item veto wasteful spending. So that's one reason why it's important for somebody who cares about these issues to be governor. Second reason is this. We were talking about this outside too. People have stopped paying attention to the mainstream media for their news because they know that they're being lied to over and over again. So where do they go? Well, they want to hear from their elected representatives directly. You know, they want to go on Facebook and read what you're arguing and think about it for themselves. And they want to read what you're saying on X and they want to think about it for themselves. And I think for people who are able to communicate on social media, you have more power, especially in a position like the governor's office where you have a huge bully pulpit and a huge platform. You have more power now because of social media than you did if you were in that job 20 years ago or 30 years ago when Facebook didn't exist. If you wanted to be governor in Mississippi in 1991, you better hope that the Clarion Ledger editorial board kind of likes what you're doing. Today, nobody cares what the Clarion Ledger editorial board says. What they want to see is they want to see you on Facebook explaining your policies, and they want to think about it for themselves. So I actually think that the Mississippi Governor's Office I really appreciate your question because it's very kind. Robert has my whole life planned out before me, which is great. But I do think that the Governor's Office is a uniquely powerful spot now to really get at fraud, waste, and abuse. Fire away. Yes, sir.
Okay, so, I do the research, and I research you too, okay, which is only fair.
Yeah.
And what I see is, you identified about $500 million that's being wasted. The legislature knows all the people that we're electing are not helping them, so we're paying $500 million to the people that keep getting up here and promising they're going to do something, which they're not doing. So it keeps going back to MSGOP, that's the power structure. So we're the alternative, that's what you need to build. This is what you need to build. And then you need to find people like this, and there's so few of them, we're electing the wrong people. They go to church with you, they went to school with you, we're getting screwed. $500 million you can prove. And you go everywhere, do you not?
Yep. So I do think that that's a really important point, is that there are good people in politics. There's some bad people in politics, true. There are some good people in politics who are simply not willing to make anybody mad, ever. and unfortunately, that group gets dragged in a direction by powerful people or by famous people who they want to be buddies with, or by lobbyists, and they're afraid of them. Yeah, that's another way of saying it. They're afraid of them. And our challenge is to find people who have the courage to do the thing even when it's hard. That's really the challenge. But look, have encouragement from this, or take encouragement from this. You look around the country, Arkansas elected the youngest governor in America, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, and she went in like a wrecking ball and has completely changed their state government like that. Florida elects a 42-year-old as governor, Ron DeSantis, and even though, I wasn't a fan of Ron DeSantis' presidential run, the stuff he did as governor, not so shabby, completely changed Florida. Ohio's about to elect a 39-year-old as governor. So other states are doing this right now. They're doing this because they see that if you get somebody, it really doesn't matter what their age is actually, if you get somebody who is willing to do the tough thing and to stand up to some of these folks, you can see huge progress in a short amount of time. The scary thing for me is, what happens if all these states around us start doing that, start making tough decisions and getting their houses in order, and we don't? That's the scary thing. What happens when North Carolina or Texas fixes all their universities? North Carolina, a year ago, shut down every DEI office at their universities. They took all the money, they fired those people, they took all the money and they put it into campus police. What happens if those states start doing that and we don't do anything different? They're going to beat us. Kids are going to want to go to those universities because they're going to be safer. The degree programs that actually get them a good job at the end of it are going to have more funding. And we're going to lose. That's what scares me.
Okay. So I think that's all the questions. There were a couple of more, but you've addressed the answers, like how to save money in education. But I have a couple of questions. What would you say, as an elected official, the most painful way for you to receive pressure from the people? Not talking about elections, but I'm talking about like a barrage of phone calls or emails or some social media posts and memes. Because I've tried to encourage people to kind of become the media by being active on social media. I personally have had experiences where I had put a post up. Everybody knows my issue's been the vaccine laws here. And I put a post up with Mississippi circled as the radical outlier, had a map of Mississippi, and within 30 minutes I got a call from a lobbyist friend at the Capitol that said that the governor's office or the lieutenant governor's office wanted me taken down. He was running for governor at the time. So I find that a lot of them seem to be really, really sensitive to social media. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, this is a cop-out answer, but I think it's just all of the above, honestly. I mean, if you want to influence things, like people are getting their news on social media, so post on social media. If you want to influence, the staff directly, you got to make the phone calls, especially at the legislature. We read the letters that come into the auditor's office. Get some tips sometimes from people saying, hey, you need to look into this, and it actually leads to real cases. So it's kind of a cop-out answer, but I would say all of the above is effective. And the good news is I think that is more effective today than it was 20 or 30 years ago, when folks just sort of said, well, as long as I'm not getting a bad article in the newspaper, I'm fine. Nowadays, I don't worry nearly as much about what the newspaper says. I actually worry about what normal people think. Because I know that, I don't know how many people are reading Mississippi Today, but I just don't care what the Mississippi Today headline says. What I care about is whether normal voters are agreeing with what you're doing. That's the main thing.
Is Mississippi the most corrupt state?
It's a great question. So there's one little data point that we have. The University of Illinois in Chicago does a study, and what they do is they look at the number of prosecutions for fraud, waste, and corruption, I should just say public corruption, per capita. And Mississippi is always, when they do those studies, always in the top 5. Now, they're measuring convictions. So you want to convict these people, right? But if you look at the other states that rank in the top 5, it's states like Louisiana and Illinois, and you don't want to be in the top 5. You look around and you think those are states that we don't really want to be clustered with. So I don't know if Mississippi is the most corrupt state, but I do think that Mississippi has habitually had a corruption problem over the course of many, many years for a variety of different reasons. One of the big reasons that we have a corruption problem is that we have a small population spread out over a big area. So you find more corruption, believe it or not, you find more corruption in small offices more so than you do big offices. So for example, the biggest, if I asked you to guess, what was the largest municipal theft in history and what city did it happen in? What city had the biggest theft of government funds in U.S. history? Some people say Chicago, New York, good guess, totally wrong. New Orleans, no, this is a little bitty city in Illinois. It's about the size of Greenville, Mississippi, believe it or not. And the reason is that in big entities, you got a lot of eyeballs everywhere, right? You got a lot of accountants and internal auditors and people looking around. In a mid-sized city, you might have one person in charge of the entire book, one person in charge of every fund for the entire city. And so in this one little city, there was one woman named Rita Crundwell who stole $53 million from a little bitty mid-sized Illinois city, the largest embezzlement in U.S. history. Mississippi, unfortunately, has a lot of small and mid-sized cities, right? So we just have an environment that is conducive to this. But I think that over time, if you keep electing people up and down the ladder from dog catcher all the way to governor who want to do the right thing, eventually that culture kind of changes over time. And y'all are doing a big part by holding them accountable, holding all of us accountable, and talking about these issues that you see every single day. You have one more?
She did that. No, I didn't know her.
Were you friends with her? How much did you get, Cynthia?
I live about 20 miles north of her. I just moved down from
Are you serious? Wow, that's wild. There's a documentary about it. You probably have seen it. All the Queen's Horses.
Yeah.
Yeah, she embezzled a bunch of the money and bought horses, show horses.
Wow.
Yeah. Yes, ma'am. Do you have one?
Yeah, I do. I don't know if you can answer it or not, but my question is about these senators that have switched from Democrat over to Republican. That just seemed very fishy, very odd to me, especially after what they did to what's her name, district.
Melanie.
Melody's senator. Yeah.
Well, look, I'll say this. I think it's good if people change their beliefs
Yeah.
and then switch to the Republican Party. Change their beliefs and then switch to the Republican Party.
Right.
The concern I have is that in Mississippi now, you got a lot of people who think, well, I have to call myself a Republican to get elected, so I'm going to call myself a Republican, but they believe the same things they believed 5 and 10 years ago. And now we're a big tent, but our big tent has been corrupted by people who don't actually share our values. That's a problem.
I see that with gun and, I was, yeah, exactly.
Yep.
You know, I was, they're not a Republican.
It's frustrating. I won't comment on any one individual specifically, but it's frustrating to see this because, you know, a lot of folks in this room who are much older than I am, you've been around and have been leading the effort to get good common sense legislation done for years, right? And then when we finally get super majorities of Republicans in the legislature, we can't get conservative stuff done. It's bizarre to me. We couldn't get DEI banned in Mississippi when Florida had banned it, Texas had banned it, Utah had banned it, Nebraska had banned it, Idaho had banned it, South Dakota's, on and on and on. Multiple states. We should have been the first ones. We should have been the first ones. But the fact that we're not the first ones shows us that there's an issue with the actual Republicans that have been elected. Robert's got one more, and then we'll get out of here.
Instead of going, when we go to McLean's and we go to Mama Hamels, instead of just sitting there and having a meal and listening to people, we need to start standing up and asking them why these things aren't happening. Because if you don't complain, they won't do anything. And we're not complaining. We keep re-electing the people that have put us in this position. You got to start standing up and saying something. And you need to bring more people. We got, what, 40 people here? We should have 75, 125 every meeting. We need to start bringing some people because that's where we're going to have the people from MSGOP are going to look and go, oh, we need to do something. These guys are going to be a problem. And that's when you go to McLean's and they have those Republican meetings, stand up. There's $500 million. The guy just proved to me we got $500 million a year that we could have not be coming out of our taxes. Are you guys enjoying paying the taxes?
Robert, you know that we've had.
Because if you don't say nothing, they're going to continue.
Robert, you know that we've had several almost victories, but come one off time, the Mississippi GOP, the money from DC comes down and the other party wins. You
Yeah.
know that.
I think what Robert's saying is right in that, you know, more people got to be engaged. But what you're doing here tonight is actually pretty important, which is just asking the tough questions, right? Just ask tough questions of everybody, including me. I volunteered for this. You know, I watched my dad, growing up, I watched my dad serve as an alderman, and, you know, I watched him get confronted by people on the street who didn't like how high their water bill was. And so I understood from a very early age, you have a responsibility, if you're going to be in one of these roles, you have a responsibility to go out and meet people and answer their questions. Even if they don't like the answer, you got a responsibility to answer the question. So y'all are doing a big part of it right now. What I would challenge you to do is basically what Robert just said, which is in venues where, you know, if a politician is not willing to come here to answer your questions, you go to them, whether it's at McLean's or whether it's Grip and Grin or whatever it is, and when they open it up for questions, ask them the tough question. Just do it.
Are we still doing the group of grants first of the month?
They do. They do in Madison County. Yep.
Yeah, I used to go to them, but I hadn't heard any more about it.
It's really hard to get up in front of people and say stuff when everybody's looking at you. It's really, it is hard. You have to
We'll get
train
you a
yourself to do
megaphone.
it.
It's all right. Thank you all for having me. It's an honor to be here.